what I've been thinking a lot about lately is emotional sobriety and self-support, because that's what this is ultimately, is the ability to support ourselves, keep our center of gravity over our 2 feet, and to honor ourselves in ways that we never have. And that means considering all sides of us. See, this is where the challenge comes in. You know, you hear Thom and I talk about that we are fragmented into several different parts, and we did that in order to adjust to the crazy culture we're in, adjust to the dynamics in our family, adjust to our own concerns and desires. And then through life, we're trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Allen Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast. I'm Tom Rutledge, and with me is producer Patrick Newman and Dr. Allen Berger. How are you, the good Dr. Allen Berger?
Well, it's a good day. It's always a good day being here with you guys and being able to explore emotional sobriety and to be able to continue this discussion about such an important topic.
Yeah, and it is that it's one of the things I tell people. I've quoted often my first sponsor in AA that said, when he's talking about marriage communication, that marriage is just one long ass conversation, but that's also kind of what psychotherapy is. Yeah, and it's like, and we teach people to kind of don't try to measure it in what did I get or how was that session or how, that kind of thing. It's an ongoing conversation, but this is another version of that. It is broken up into these segments. We do find a beginning, a middle, and an end to each one of these, but ultimately, it is, I think we're being successful with this. It is a conversation about what not only what emotional sobriety is, but how we got there and what to do about it.
Yeah.
And it is the same conversation.
It is a conversation. And I think part of the conversation is also our ongoing discovery of what emotional sobriety is. People think about us as somehow experts in it, but you and I and Patrick and, those people in our Thursday night meeting, we're still discovering what this thing is. I mean, Bill gave us a starting point, but we've been on this journey now, and today we're really going into an area that is very interesting to tie it into emotional sobriety. But before we do, let's check in with Patrick. Patrick.
Oh, terrible emotional sobriety week. I did very poorly.
Well, that's good.
lots of opportunities for lessons. That's right. Oh my goodness!
We're the only ones that are going to tell you that's good when you've had a bad week.
It's like I think I've checked in about this particular ongoing issue I've had before, where I've got a text thread with all my family members where we talk politics, and I lit into my family over some disagreements about policing in America. Very strong feelings one way about it. They've got strong feelings the other way about it. And, I seek that validation, that kind of reassurance from people and outside of myself. And when I don't get it, I think I tend to throw a bit of a tantrum. And so this isn't me, ceding my beliefs, but it's me ceding that my behavior surrounding my beliefs is a little unhealthy at times.
Well, that's a tough balance, though, too, Patrick. Especially, and again, one of the things I've learned is not all systems don't work the same way. So, not knowing your family, it's like, it's like I've known families that, well, Allen, you can identify with this. I had a good friend for years. I spent lots and lots of time with. He and his family, they're just just stereotypical straight out Italian family that just would drive me nuts. It freaked me out at first because I came from such a shut down, family in West Texas. It's like, but they could talk, they could do all that stuff and still be okay with each other and say, and they could be a little freer with what they had to say, and even in terms of insults and things like that, where things that most of the time I'm saying to clients and stuff is, no, you don't talk to people that way. But you get to know a certain family, you kind of go, well, you guys do actually. I mean, I had one family that I used to say, they used to come in, the whole family would come into my office and just, I mean, it was like every rule I ever had for any family that just said, well, this is an absolute rule. It's like, I ended up just throwing them all out because they were just, I was there to bear witness, and I would watch them again and again go into these places that in my family would have destroyed us every time. And in that time, by the end of each session, they were off to have dinner together, so anyway, I just want to say that be careful that you're not judging yourself too harshly. And then the other is, those are tough subjects, and and we're all trying to find out where we can express ourselves and actually make a difference, maybe influence other people. It's hard.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, Patrick, because I was just talking to somebody the other day who's very involved politically, and she says, what about emotional sobriety in politics? So I'm talking to her about possibly appearing on the show and us having a whole show about emotional sobriety and how does that relate to the political atmosphere that we're dealing with today in our country.
Yep. Well, as you can probably guess, that idea excites me quite a bit.
No, I think it's an important thing because what do we learn in recovery? We want to practice these principles, practice emotional sobriety in all of our affairs. It's not just in our relationships with those people we love and care about, but it's how we connect to life, how we connect to the political scene in our lives. I mean, the whole thing. And so that's why I'm saying, I mean, we're discovering so much about emotional sobriety and all of its applications in all the areas of our life. And so I think I'm looking forward to that show.
Hopefully, absolutely. And that's,
she'll agree. If not, if she doesn't, then, we'll still devote the show and we'll find someone else. But
I think it's, when you said one, I was going to say, no, I think it's an important stuff. When we say apply these principles to all of our affairs, it's like, I mean, I think that's unfortunately what we've done in our culture and sometimes within our families. It's like, okay, well, this applies except when it comes to money, or this applies except when it comes to religion, and politics is the third one on that triad there. So I think that's true. That's one of the when I wrote my thing that's available, by the way, available free on my website called Therapy for Politics, it was because I had been writing some I thought really fun things to do, but very satirical political stuff during the George Bush W. Bush presidency. But when I realized that I was in a process of only preaching to the choir, and just entertaining myself and people who liked me, and that I realized that I'm not actually contributing to anything. So I think that I like the idea of us taking this stuff and saying, how does what we're talking about, and I've been talking about how what we do in therapy applies to politics for years, but it's, I can't think of a better model to do this with than emotional sobriety. Yeah.
So I could just check in about the definitions with Allen. One of the most important fundamental things about emotional sobriety is that it puts you into alignment with reality. Is that a fair thing to say?
That's one dimension of it, one way of thinking about it. Other ways of thinking about it is that it helps us achieve a certain degree of autonomy in our connection with life and with people that we care about, and with politics even, is that we don't get overly influenced. And that doesn't mean we don't become passionate. See, it's this real.
Well, right. It helps you fight better, right? That's what I would think.
That might be a good way to say it. It's like, we're not talking about becoming a pacifist and rolling over either. I mean, that's not what emotional sobriety is.
Mhm.
There's an appropriate assertiveness in every situation. And emotional sobriety, what I've been thinking a lot about lately is emotional sobriety and self-support, because that's what this is ultimately, is the ability to support ourselves, keep our center of gravity over our 2 feet, and to honor ourselves in ways that we never have. And that means considering all sides of us. See, this is where the challenge comes in. You hear Thom and I talk about that we are fragmented into several different parts, and we did that in order to, adjust to the crazy culture we're in, adjust to the dynamics in our family, adjust to our own concerns and desires. And then through life, we're trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? Trying to find a way to coordinate all these parts that were not put together in coordination. Right. See, when a certain part of us came into existence, it didn't say, hey, let me see how I fit in with the rest of you guys. I mean, It didn't do that. It just said, I'm a specialist. I'm coming on board here because you need me. And you need me for whatever reason. You need me as part of who you are.
And back up for a second, because I think, first of all, I think, we could, and maybe that's kind of what we're trying to do in writing the book we're working on, for the daily book. But I think you'd almost do a daily definition. It's a little, emotional sobriety is a little bit, reminds me a lot of, not a little bit, but a lot of codependency. How many different ways can you define codependency? How many different ways can you define recovery from codependency? It's like, because so often what we're talking about, first of all, codependency could really be, at least in the Western world, I think, synonymous with the human condition, and so what we're trying, so I think in a lot of ways, what Melody Beatty was talking about, what has been talking about, continues talking about, is still about, again, we're using different language sometimes, but emotional sobriety. And we ought to ask Melody to come on. Melody's endorsed a couple of my books. I've never met her personally, but she's always been extremely supportive to my stuff, including the fact the very first book I had of little nutshells, she's the one who told me to take the nutshell out that said, always never take a business card with a crumpled corner. Now, see, that was my smart ass little thing about the fact, of course, that had been used to pick somebody's teeth. And so that and apparently everybody doesn't get that, but Melody was the one who told me, take the smart ass out of the book. It's like, so I thank her for that. But the thing I wanted to go back to was, you said self-support. It's because I was writing about respect earlier this week, and it's like, and it goes to the political stuff. It's like, respecting somebody you agree with is easy, but respect is the missing ingredient in politics. It's like understanding what respect is, and understanding respect is not synonymous with agreement. Respect simply means I understand, and it is emotional sobriety. I understand that I am one being and you are another being, and Patrick is another. It's like, we are separate people. We are separate entities. We each are in charge of our own domain here. It's like, and so to learn how, because I mean, my goodness, if we can figure out some ways of teaching effectively how to respect, have it demonstrate respect in times of extreme disagreement, then we have something. So I look forward to this.
I'm reading a book right now called Band of Giants, and it's about the Revolutionary War. Since I moved to Pennsylvania, as you guys know, I've gotten very interested in learning as much as I can about the Revolutionary War. I've taken a tour. I go to Washington's Crossing a couple times a year, look at, witness reenactments and stuff. And it's very interesting that as the war was unfolding, Congress, at first was very involved and supportive with all the soldiers. And as the war went on, they distanced themselves. They got so disconnected from the troops, and they really did not show any interest in taking care of their needs and supporting them. And yet these are men and women fighting for our country. And, and when I look at how I see politics so disconnected from experience, people's experience, right? It's supposed to be, a political body that's to represent us. But I'm telling you, even as great as those founding fathers were, that split happened very early in terms of the disconnection. And here they're still fighting the war against the British. And, you know, the whole independence is going to rest on how well these guys are able to handle themselves at the end, because they were going to start, you know, going face to face with the British Army, which up to this point, there was a lot of skirmishes, but no armies two standing off with each other. And I'm telling you, man, it is very interesting. Washington, thank God for him, man. He was able to confront Congress and confront them about what they were doing and saying, you guys better get your head out of your ass if you want this country to become independent, because it's going to take an army. And these men and women, see, and the difference was, the split was, most of the soldiers, not the officer corps, but the grunts, right? They were poor people.
Yeah.
They were farmers. They weren't wealthy. They didn't own a lot of money. They came out of their farms. They came out of their cabins. They were called militiamen, right? Back in the time, Minutemen and stuff like that. They were the militia. That's what comprised our army. There was no professional army here, right? We didn't have that.
Well, that was the source of their power, is that they're fighting for their homes.
Yeah. That was for them. But the split between the haves and the have-nots, there was a lack of respect from the haves to the have-nots. And these are the people that were risking their lives for these people to enjoy their independence. You know, when I read that, it really said, my God, this struggle we've been having goes way back, doesn't it? You know, it's not something that's just happening right now in terms of the disconnection. My God.
Well, that helped. That, see, to me, anytime we're dealing with stuff, it really does help me to become. And I definitely was not a very good student of history growing up. But if I got a reboot on my life, one of the things I would do is I would become a historian for sure. First of all, it educates you about everything, and the understanding is that it does actually help in a weird way to realize, you know, because we tend to go like, oh my God, what's happening now? It's horrible. It's never happened before. You know, you go like, no, it's all happened before. It's like now, but the good news, that's not to give us complacency. It's to say, so therefore, let's go back in time. You know, our old expression we use in emotional sobriety, you know, learn from the past. You know, it's like we go back there and get those lessons. But it is reassuring to realize, no, those people were human beings too, and they were out of touch in ways that people today are out of touch.
That's right. You know? That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, it's been very interesting. I've really been it's really opened up a whole, like you said. I mean, you know, I kind of treated history as I need to take it as one of the requirements. But now, as I've gotten older, maybe because I'm older too, right? I'm looking at my life and stuff.
Oh, it makes a difference. We understand. We have a different relationship with time, Alan. You and I do.
Yeah, we do.
It's like because we can count by 70. It's like
that's right.
You know, and 140 years ago was not that long ago. And I don't know if the name of the book, I was looking to see if I had it here. The name of the book that the I think it's on Netflix, but the series is called Washington Spies.
Yes. Yes,
it's first of all, it's a wonderful series. It's you know, Dee and I both loved it very much. But I also read the book it was based on, and man, it was done so well, and it's sort of like what you're experiencing. I think being up there now is you realize, oh man, this is real. This really happened. You know, you can.
Yeah. Well, now you just gave me another book to put on my reading list. That sounds fascinating.
It is wonderful. And if you haven't seen the series is amazing.
No.
No.
But you know, you see, and one of the things that I'm really learning about Washington. He was gifted in his ability to respect everyone. The soldier that was from the poorest situation felt respected by Washington, all the way to the members of the Congress. And that was his gift, man. He would sit down, he would go play cricket with some of the guys out, you know, and stuff like that. And he was like one of the guys, but still the leader. I mean, what, and there's been a few other generals that we've seen that have had that capacity, right? To be, I forget his name, the general that Operation Freedom, the Kuwait conflict that happened. General, was it Schwarzkopf? That's what it was. He was amazing to me. He said, this is the guy who's crying because he lost some of his men.
Yeah.
I mean, the compassion he had, you want to fight for a guy like that. Washington had that. He really, and I think that is one of the other things you're saying, Thom, is that as we achieve this emotional sobriety, all these divisions about right and wrong, even though they're there, we still find a way to see beyond all that stuff, see beyond status, socioeconomic status, right? And just see people struggling to find a way. And while they may find a way different than us, they're still trying to find some way.
Right. Well, the other thing I realized we've done is we've made this wonderful segue into our topic for the day, which is role models. How to find role models. And I would not. And again, this is what I love about spontaneous conversations. I would not have predicted in 1,000 years that the first role model we would talk about would be George Washington. But and I know, and I think I've read less than you have about him. But what I do know about him, he is a wonderful role model in many ways. And it's like, and I love the idea that we can take role models. Hell, you can take role models from fiction. It's like, one of the things that I was talking with Patrick about earlier about just the idea is like the thing about using role models in emotional sobriety. It's like, because we're among other things, we're building skill sets. It's like the challenge there is how can I learn something from this from this person or from this person's example, but not give myself away like I have in the past, not be either I have to be defended or I have to give myself away. And the way I heard somebody say it, and it actually, I mentioned Melody Beatty before, it might've been Melody Beatty that I heard say this, is that we can, as we're recovering, we can find lots of wonderful parenting in any number of people and never have to make any one of them our parent. And so the idea, because we all have that ability to get attached, or we can get attached to people like that, and then we set up through emotional sobriety the unrealistic expectations, the disappointment, and stuff like that. But the idea that I can say, Patrick does so and so well. He does this and that. It's like I always think of him when I'm trying to do this thing, or I think about Allen, or I think about George Washington. It's like that's one of the things that history, our own history, personal history, and broader history gives us is people to learn from.
Yes, that's a wonderful. But I love how you said it. See, I'll just share my own experience. So for me, I lost my dad at a very early age. I think most people that have been following our talk for a while, or following our podcast for a while, understand that. And so one of the big voids in my life was a father figure.
Yeah.
And as we've mentioned before, is that we're all wired to move towards wholeness. And so what I unconsciously did was kept searching for a father figure to replace him.
Yep.
And so one of them became a drill instructor in the Marine Corps. It's when I went in at 17 years old. And I'll never forget.
You had a vacancy. You had vacancies.
I had a vacancy inside me. Yeah. And the one thing that stands out from boot camp, in addition to the ordeal it was, and the challenge it was, the kindness that this one drill instructor showed me. So one of the things that we had to do in order to be pinned with the globe and anchor is you had to pass a pretty rigorous physical fitness test, right? And a lot of the training that was done on the physical side was to prepare you for this test at the end of boot camp that everybody had to do. There was a certain number of push-ups, pull-ups. You had to climb 100 feet rope and touch the top and get down in a certain amount of time. I mean, there were some challenging things, go over walls. I mean, all kinds of stuff that in a combat situation, you might be likely to be confronted with and have to deal with. So I was a scrawny little guy when I went in the Marine Corps. I was 130 pounds soaking wet. I did not have much muscle on my body at all. I mean, I think when I was in, we were doing overhand pull-ups. I could hardly do one. I mean, and you had to do 12. I mean,
wow.
Fitness tests. So I had a long way to go, right? Well, the other thing you had to do, and it took a lot of upper body strength if you didn't know how to do it, was to climb those ropes.
Yeah.
And, remember guys in the gym class or something like that, the big guys, the gym guys, they would just pick it up and their legs would be just out on the side and they just pull themselves up with their arms.
I remember it well. Yeah.
I could pull myself up maybe a foot off the ground and then I fall because I didn't have the arm strength. And I remember this one drill instructor said, "You are never going to pass this test unless I teach you how to do this." And what he did is he came up to me, he says, "You're going to have to become an inchworm. And I'm going to show you how to do that." So he says, "Pull yourself up and take your one leg and wrap the rope around your leg. Now take your foot, pull your leg up and your other foot, and now put it on top of that rope. Now you've created a foundation to push yourself up with your legs. And then you just keep repeating that like an inchworm all the way up the rope."
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's great.
And all of a sudden, I find myself at the top of this rope. And I'm going, my God, I might actually be able to graduate boot camp. I mean, I thought there's going to be a few obstacles I wasn't sure I could pull off. That the pull-ups was another one. But the guy took me under his wing, like I would imagine my father would, taught me how to deal with this situation, how to develop a competency, a capacity that I didn't have. And it was amazing. That's the one memory of kindness.
Beautiful. We're filling in developmental deficits. When we talk about child within, it's like, no, it's children within. And it's because every place where we, by omission or commission, every place where our child self did not get developmental needs met, they set up a camp and just popped a tent, and they've been waiting for us ever since. Now here's what I believe about this, and I want to say this to everybody so they get. I've been working on this a long time, as you have, Allen. I have no belief that I'll ever come close to actually being able to reach every one of those campsites with those kids. It's like, that's okay. That's not the goal. The goal is to recognize them when I come across them. And it's like and the cool thing about this, and this is one of and this is kind of maybe a bit of a stretch, but it's not in my head. It's, that's a piece of experiential therapy you experienced with that drill sergeant. It's like you experienced something that was literal, but it was also symbolic. And that's what we do with experiential therapy. It's like he symbolically gave you this parental piece where, and there's so much there. I mean, I could go off on that forever. It's like, the idea is like, not only is it, I can teach you how to do this, but by the way you see other people doing it, if that's not the way, if that's not your way, there's another way. Let's find your way. It's like, it's because I have a feeling this guy that was teaching you this could actually do this stuff with his arms and just leave his legs hanging. I bet he didn't. I bet he wasn't an inchworm. He just knew about inchworming. It's like, but it's like but we know that you took that into your. We're so resourceful. Our consciousness is so resourceful because you took that in at that point. You didn't know exactly what. I mean, you didn't have any of this kind of thinking at that moment in time. But it's like it's with you today. Because it fit that need so perfectly. I love that. Makes me cry.
No, it's a very tight. I got goosebumps sharing it with you because it was so touching. And look, and after that, there was other role models that I had in the Marine Corps. I mean, when I was in Vietnam, the captain of our battery, he and I became very good friends. And that was very unusual for an officer to become friends with one of the enlisted. But we had a couple Korean Marines assigned to our unit to teach us Taekwondo because we were going to be going on a big operation up near the border of Laos, and hand-to-hand combat was, a real possibility. So they wanted to make sure that our close combat skills were really tweaked. So they assigned 2 Korean Marines with us. And every night we went up they built a dojo at the top of the hill. I was on Hill 55. We loaded everybody up in our deuce and a halves. We kept enough guys to protect the wire where we were at on the hill. And we went up and we trained every night. And I would drive the captain up, sometimes in his Jeep. Sometimes he would jump in the deuce and a half that I would drive up. And then, he would pull me into his hooch at night and said, all right, let's go over this stuff. Let's work on it together and stuff like that. And so we became quite close, but it was another one of those examples of here's my father figure, right? And that just continued on and on. Like you said, Thom, I had no idea that this is what I was doing, that I was trying to trying to complete myself. See, that's the way we talk about it. I was moving towards wholeness and trying to have these experiences that I hope I would have had with my dad, had he not passed away, and they weren't available. So now I looked in my environment to see what was.
And there's also I love the idea that we, because so often, I'm a big believer that our conscious minds, think too much of themselves. They think they have to be involved with everything. They really are cocky. They think, oh no, I've got to figure this out for it to be okay. And it's like, no, they don't. It's like, it's almost like sometimes I just feel like probably the best therapists working with me along the way have probably just been wise enough to give my conscious mind busy work. Why don't you go work on this project over there in that corner? And, while we're actually healing you. But it's like I love the idea that, and see, this goes so much to what you talk about, like when you're talking about just from the beginning of life, get out of the way. It's natural. It's our nature. So the idea is, I don't know exactly how that works, but I like the idea that you're drawn to that experience, and that another human being is able to identify that experience. Not necessarily you're out of your conscious minds doing that. It's like, but there's a deeper connection where these people that are helping you fill these deficits are showing up for you. And and this is one of the things we have to realize as we're talking to people who are in a process of recovery, is like, we have to be, this is where it takes guts. You have to be open to it. You have to be available to it. You have to be willing to do that. It's like, example would be, how hard is it to when you may need something very much from somebody, but you're going to have to do the hard work of trusting.
An important component of this, I think it's present in a lot of recovery, is take what you can use, leave the rest. And then as parallel to that, it's you need to receive the spirit that's being transmitted. So but I like the fact that you brought up, because I repeat that one more times than probably most, is most of the lines from AA, which is take what's helpful, leave what's not. But I from my own personal history, I can say, be careful not to reject something is not applicable to you too quickly, because very often some of the things I've needed the most are the ones that I have dug my heels in against the most. It's almost, that's the sign. If I really feel, it's one thing to kind of have a shrug. I don't think that applies to me. Another thing, if I feel my heels digging in, it's like, now my recovery voice is more likely than not to say, okay, we need to stop and consider this, because this is probably important. And that's just from history, history. Yeah,
that's right on. I think that's right on, Thom. The other thing that I was going to say, which really is true for me, is that you mentioned this a minute ago, I no longer needed those role models to be perfect, but earlier on I did.
Yeah.
See, that's a very interesting thing, is that for some reason, and I think there's a lot of good reasons for it, I idealized those people. And I wanted them, or I thought I needed them to be perfect.
Right.
And that's the difference between making them a parent and not
accepting parenting from them.
Yes. See, that's different.
Yes.
And we even have to go through that with our parents at times. I mean, I'm saying that.
Oh, we do. Absolutely.
There's no question about it, but it was a very interesting, evolution, because, two of the other people that became very important to me was, the first one was Well, he's still part of my three people. Thom, my sponsor, who you guys have met, he became that for me. I mean, big time. He had faith in me, and it was an amazing thing with him. But that same thing evolved. But with Thom, for some reason, and it was different. What I loved about him the most was how much he embraced not being perfect.
Right. Well, that's actually what I was going to say to what you've said before. I'm going like this guy presents up front his imperfections.
He does.
It's like he brings them in the room and shows them to you.
He does. And look at it. I mean, there was such a freedom in that I saw. And
that's what he's think about that. It just occurs to me. That's what he's role modeling for us. It's like, because how much freedom is there? I mean, neither of us, I know this is true. Neither of us sweat, somebody pointing out something that we might have just, in our personal, communication or whatever fucked up. I mean, I don't want that to happen, but if it happens, when it happens, it's not if, when it happens, that's fine. It's like, I'm happy to learn. It's like, now it's easier to do when we're doing it at Patrick, when he says he's had a tough week, and we go, oh, good for you. You got lots to learn from. But I can also say, I believe that we're two people, and this is a way that I think basically, maybe in a way we have in fact earned a place of some level of expertise, and it is being farther enough along the path to where I can say that far more times than not, it's not going to take me long to go ahead and find that humility and realize this is an opportunity for me to learn something. And that's Thom, your sponsor, Thom, he just exudes that.
He does, doesn't he? He really, yes. And he still does today. I mean, I just see that in his behavior so much. The other two role models for me was Dr. William Rader and Dr. Walter Kempler.
Mm-hmm.
And with both of them, I had to go through that period of time, which I never did with my dad, where I got upset when I saw their flaws.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the best way to describe it, is that both of them I had a wonderful relationship with both of them. Bill Rader was the person who really saw my potential as a psychotherapist and as a psychologist. And he really, he supported me like I would have been supported by my father. Mm-hmm. This is what he did to me. When I went my first year at graduate school, I pretty much expired my GI Bill getting my undergraduate degree. And it was going to be tough. I don't come from a wealthy background. We were at the best kind of low middle class. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't getting any support, from my mom. I couldn't expect it. She was just barely taking care of herself. Right. Mm-hmm. So Bill sent me $500 a month as a stipends while I was going to my first year, get my PhD. Mm-hmm. And I didn't ask for it. He says, while you're gone, I know it's going to be a tough year for you. You're not going to be able to work much, and I don't want you to. I want you to focus on studies. I'm going to send you $500 a month. I can do it. I'm doing pretty well in my life. Mm-hmm. Says, all I'd ask you to do is that during the summer, when you're off, if you come down and come to work with me for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There it is, man. I can cry almost when I say that now. My God, what a gift.
Well, let me ask you this. You're the parent of how many adult children do you have?
I got 2 adults and 2 youngins.
Right. Yeah. So you've probably been through that with your adult children too, because that's because one thing I heard Joe Cruz, Sharon Wexler Cruz's husband, who did the on-site stuff with her, say years ago was I thought what just really got my attention. And he said if you look, he was talking about families, and he says if you look at the history of your family, it's like you don't think of it when the kids are little, but he says if you look at the life expectancy being what we hope it will be, and your example with your dad is obviously an example where it is not always, but if life expectancy as you hope it will be, the vast majority of the relationship time that you're going to have with your children is when they're adults. It's like, and he said, that's what you're working toward, raising adults. It's like, it's like, and I've seen so many people. I've been a part of a family in which that transition was never made, whether it was adult relationships with each other. But and I've not been in that on the other side because I'm not a parent, but I would ask you if sort of to let me know if I'm on the right track, is the idea that has to be a difficult thing for you to do as a parent when your kids do, in fact, if they're sticking with you, then they're going to get to know you from different angles. I don't know if is it depth or whatever, but different angles. And they're going to have to face, whatever idealized thing they ever did.
Oh yeah.
You got to come off the pedestal.
Yeah, no, that's happened with both Danielle,
because I know you have good relationships with both of these kids, or adults, they're not kids.
Yeah, no, definitely. We did go through that, and I think we're closer today and have a more realistic relationship today than because of it.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to go through, is when our kids see us now as human, not as perfect, right?
Well, and to me,
now, with Cece, I'm still perfect though. So
I know.
I'm the best dad ever.
Yeah.
By the way, in case you were wondering,
I
told me this morning, you are the best dad ever.
Okay. All right. Well, I need you to do me a favor then. I need you to ask her, and I'm going to have to trust you to ask this fairly. So not to lead the witness. It's like, I need you to ask her, which one of us is better with the chicken bop?
I think she's going to definitely say you, because I shut down that chicken box stuff. I swear to God, that was chicken box. I've had chicken box every morning now for the last several weeks.
You're a saner man than I am. It's like it's like the level of at that age. I just that small amount of time. I loved hanging out with her, but just the idea of I'd forgotten. I'd been so long since I've been around little kids. How really completely attached they are to repetition. You cannot do this enough times. You cannot watch this thing enough times. It's like. Don't you, and then I realized I was even saying stuff like, well, aren't you getting kind of tired of this? And, it's like, well, that's stupid. Of course she's not look at her. She's not tired of it.
Not tired at all.
But
there is something about that repetition, isn't there? That's an important thing to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
That's part of our development too, our learning, man, is really trying to get it, understand it, experience it. I mean, it's so true.
Even if it's not always clearly articulated in the rooms, one thing I like in the recovery space, as opposed to like what some might call outside life or real life, is that the idea of perfection is, the people in recovery know it to be kind of mystical, unattainable, and kind of unreasonable.
Well, it's two things. See, you have that camp because we're told clearly, Bill even said it. We strive for spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection, because he knew we were going to all try to be, perfectionists in this program. Unfortunately, people still hold up an ideal about what recovery is supposed to look like. I remember one of the things that struck me, and this was back to the thing about role models. I was in Hawaii. This is during my first year of recovery. And, this was one of the meetings where everybody's talking about you have to go to X number of meetings a week in order to have a good program. And there's a gal that came in that hadn't been going to a lot of meetings. And all of the shares were shaming her because she hadn't been going to 4 or 5 meetings a week. She had been doing maybe 1 or 2. And this one guy that I always respected the kind of recovery that he had, he got up and he says, listen, I don't know if you guys hear what's going on in here, but we're setting it up like she's doing something wrong because she's not attending a certain number of meetings. There's no rule about how many meetings we need to attend in AA. There's no ideal. We each do what we think we need, and each of our program is going to be different. And that's the basis of our program, is that what keeps me sober may not keep you sober. Right. And he says that we have to have enough room to respect all of our differences and not make someone feel bad because they're not living up to some kind of a standard.
Yeah.
Boy, that impressed me. He
Oh,
says
absolutely.
nowhere does any bill ever talk about in
Right.
any of the literature how many meetings you're supposed to go to a week.
Well, and when we become aware, what I try to teach people too is that it is quite is. I mean, it's I was going to say natural, but maybe even just impossible to not do this. Is we are going to, initially, whenever we hear something from somebody else, we're going to use ourselves as the standard of measure.
Yep.
So when I say, wow, that's that much repetition of chicken bop, I couldn't handle it. It's like, and that's my basis for my admiration for you and your chicken bop stamina. It's like, okay, well, that's one thing, but the truth is I'm not you. I don't know what that's like for you. I don't know how you do that kind of stuff. And it's like, but our but the thing is, we criticize people with when I see it this last week in the session where somebody hears from people about she's been in an abusive relationship, and well, why don't you just why don't you just quit, get out of that? Is the same as saying to me or you, why don't you just drink less? It's like, well, we have to go past that. And the other thing is, I love that example you gave from the meeting, because not only was that a wonderful, kind and compassionate intervention from that fellow, but it also takes us back to the principles before personalities, which is a share experience, strength, and hope. I can tell you about me. That's what that says. I can only tell you about me. We can share stories of other people that we've known, but it's like that, and that's a sharing of experience as well. But it's like, nobody there. I love that. There's no rules that say how many meetings.
Yeah. Well, that just is a segue to another topic. We got a note from someone that says, I love what you guys are doing, but could you mention, and they say, I'm not saying you guys aren't doing this, but you're not talking about emotional, that people don't need AA. They just need emotional sobriety. And we're not saying that. And I hope nobody interprets anything we're saying as that. Emotional sobriety is the result of working the 12 steps. It's not independent from that. Yes, there are other dimensions to it, that psychotherapy, that other, powerful personal growth experiences can enhance. But I believe, and I think you do, Tom, that still AA is the gold standard, man. If you
this fits perfect. I appreciate that comment from somebody. It's like that fits because good communication, you keep your defenses down and you get a chance to clarify. It's like, so that that is when I say I use myself as a standard of measure, that's been my way through 12 steps. That's where the emotional sobriety stuff comes from. It's like I'm like I am with religion. I'm not a fundamentalist anything. So including a fundamentalist AA, or so I don't, whatever emotional sobriety is, or the language that somebody else has it in their own practice. I don't think that we have a corner on the market of this is the only way you can find your way there. But certainly in response to that comment, it's like, I appreciate us even having the opportunity to reconnect it and to say that this is the way we have discovered it. This is the way we practice it, is through the 12 steps.
That's right. And you're right. It's not the only way, but look, it is the program that has helped the most people that have suffered from this. There's been others, but no other program can claim the degree of success that AA and NA have in helping the alcoholic and addict who's still suffering. Well, very interesting conversation today, isn't it? Very interesting.
We covered our personal histories. We covered the history of our nation.
Stand by, man. We may
chicken bop.
We got chicken
bop. We've got range, man.
I mean, if you've got Alexa at home, just say, Alexa, play chicken bop, and you will hear what Cece's been listening to recently.
That's right. It will do it.
And to really get in the spirit, you have to do it at least 100 times.
That's
exactly.
All right. Until next time, guys.
Okay.
Right,
peace out.
Tend your life. Tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.